I'm Richard Hart, and this is my new layout, Hartley Poole Too. Well, as you can see from my shirt, my first layout was called Hartley Poole. Being rather economical, I decided it would be cheaper to embroider the word "Too" T-O-O, onto the shirt than to buy 7 new shirts for the team that operates the layout. Well, we're all members of the Alsagar Railway Association, although this is my own layout, not a club one. But I draw heavily from the expertise and experience of my fellow club members, people who will be well known to readers of BRM magazine. We have Andy Small, who's an expert weatherer. He is the club chairman. John Cox, who is the vice chairman, and you will have seen his layout featured in BRM magazine, not Littlefield. He's also the club's exhibition manager and layout manager, and I draw heavily on his experience and indeed woodworking skills. I think we do a lot of shows each year. I am away for about 20 weekends a year, time which my wife calls her quality time whilst we're away. We have 2 club layouts, Newcastle by the Water and Fredstone Lane, and most of the members of the club have their own layouts. Duncow Road for Andy Small, Bluebell Cutting for Steve Lowndes, and so on. So we do get invited to a lot of shows throughout the year. I was quite taken with the idea of doing a power station, and I realised that to do a merry-go-round would actually require me buying an awful lot of new rolling stock for the era required for a merry-go-round. However, I just happened across a photograph of a 1940s wartime camouflaged cooling tower at Newton Abbot. So I decided to use my existing rolling stock, my GWR, and break all the rules and run a merry-go-round in the wartime. I know it's anathema to a lot of people, such an anachronism as it is. But nevertheless, it's my layout, and that's rule number 1. Whatever I decide goes. And I just built it up on that basis. So we have a central power station with a cooling tower, which has steam coming from it. There's a steam machine hidden inside the cooling tower. But that left me with several square feet of baseboard either side of the cooling tower, and so I decided on the wartime theme because there's such a lot of good equipment around, vehicles, ordnance, military equipment from companies like Pendragon and Grey Models, and indeed Oxford Diecast, producing a lot of tanks and wartime equipment, and the whole thing just came together pretty piecemeal, but perhaps under the umbrella of a wartime theme. The power station is in the centre of a circular track which depicts a merry-go-round, where I have a coal train coming in with coal from the North Somerset coalfield. It brings in the coal and it unloads the coal, and the train then disappears behind the back scene. This triggers off an identical train, same locomotive, same rake of wagons, but this time they're laden with the waste ash, and they come out of a different shed and they're taken away to be turned into breeze blocks or something similar. And the whole thing is automated using a Heathcote SA5 unit, which has the infrared dots, so that when a train triggers it off, it can actually fire 4 points via a CDU, heavy duty CDU, and that then provides power to the track for the second train to come out. With a suitable gap, an interval, it enables the trains to run automatically, leaving the operators to run the main line on the outside tracks. I'm calling it a GWR main line. It's fictitious. And one of the reasons that I called it the Somerset Levels is because, quite frankly, I haven't put many hills or any hills on the layout. So I thought I would try and get away with the notion of it being the Somerset Levels, and it looks a bit odd with one of the trains having a banker on the Somerset Levels, but my backstory will be that it's preparing to go up Wellington Bank. I like to do something that's a little different from just taking it out of the packet and putting it onto the tracks. For example, I've got 7 or 8 Union Mills locomotives, and what I do with them is to try and personalise them a little. I put the head coat lamps on the front. I put a vacuum pipe on. I put crew in on the footplate with a shovel or two. And there I also put in a tarpaulin over the top of the cab on some of them in order to offer rain protection. And little things like that, just to add a little bit of something different from straight out of the packet. Many people who attend exhibitions will come across grey models, which is a Second World War orientated layout, but also retailer. And he got me quite interested in a lot of the equipment that he has on offers. I have 3 Bofors anti-aircraft guns, for example. He also has vehicles like Terrapins and Churchill tanks. And I just became rather interested in seeing how one could populate a layout in wartime and give it that sort of feeling. But in conversation with them, asking about additional soldiers, he put me in touch with Pendragon miniature models, and they are not really a model railway company at all. They do war games and that sort of thing, but nevertheless they have a plethora of interesting vehicles, and I was able to make use of information which I gleaned from the Tank Museum video on YouTube, and decided that I would go for the out of the ordinary tanks and armoured vehicles used by the Royal Engineers and have them in the run-up to D-Day. And the reason that I chose this date was that buying Oxford die-cast models, they actually come ready-made with D-Day decals on them. And so, having acquired more decals from Pendragon, I was able then to put these onto the vehicles that I have got, and that's where the variety that I have came from. The searchlights have come from Kite's lights, and they are 12-volt lights with resistors. Don't make the mistake that I did originally of running the 3-volt lights with 12 volts, because they make an interesting sound and produce some smoke, but as the saying goes, you can't put the smoke back in once it's come out. I've turned them into searchlights by using emplacements from PD models and Pendragon, but also wartime photographs have shown that several of these searchlights were actually put onto Caterpillar tracked vehicles with remote controlling by soldiers who stood some distance away from the lights, just in case German aircraft would strafe the searchlights. They would be standing, hopefully, out of harm's way. And so I have 2 of those, which have brought down a Focke-Wulf 190, which has crashed into an Antcorton cottage. The cottage kit is actually a ruined cottage, but I can't imagine for 1 minute that Antcorton expected to have had a ruined cottage caused by a Luftwaffe plane flying into it. One of the benefits of lockdown has been that I've made much more progress with finishing the layout than I otherwise might have done, because I would have been out at shows. The downside is, of course, all of the exhibitions have been cancelled. And so I'm all dressed up and ready with nowhere to go. And so I am really looking forward to being able to take the layout out on the road and meet as many viewers as who would like to come along and talk to us and share the experience of operating it with us.